As you fill out this form with your supervisor or division head, the two of you will work together to develop a mutually agreed upon goal, which will go in the first box in the form. Next, you'll look at the Danielson rubric for when you're evaluated at the end of the year. You'll connect this goal to a particular part of the Danielson rubric you're going to be working on. And together, you'll also discuss how this goal will contribute to the division attaining its goals. You'll also discuss the steps that need to be taken to perform well on this goal, steps that both you and your division head or supervisor need to take. And then finally, indicators that will show progress or attainment of the goal. Once this form is completed and typed up, it'll be given to you for your signature to indicate that yes, this goal was mutually agreed upon and in collaboration with your division head.
If you're unable to come to a mutually agreed upon goal, then there is a procedure which has been formalized, which will come into play.
Hi Dick, thanks for coming in for your goals conference today.
Yeah.
Want to sit down, hopefully have a chance to talk to you through the process, but I see they had a chance to work through the form. Let's start actually with some of the thoughts that you had, and then we'll take that and see how that ties into some of the goals what we're trying to do here in the division and the school.
You know, my honors chemistry class last year, the one thing I noticed when I was thinking about you know, what's happened before, is a lot of the kids, I give them homework, but there's so much stuff going on in all their classes and everything. They didn't all get a chance to finish it. Some of the kids obviously would. Other kids on some days would and some days wouldn't. And some kids never would. And so it wasn't consistent that I could move on the next day to the next piece of information or the activity or the lab or whatever we were going to do, because they weren't finishing the work. So I thought, okay, how can I fix that? And that's where this need came from. The need really was, you know, I don't know, they're not being prepared because they're not having time to do the homework. It's an honors class, they should do it, but it's not always possible because they do have other classes.
Sure.
So what I started thinking about doing is, I don't know if you've heard of it, this thing called a flipped classroom.
I have actually heard of that, but let me, why don't you go ahead and explain it to make sure that it matches up what I'm thinking and what you're thinking.
Here's what I envision, and as I understand the idea, and I tried it a little bit last year, at the end of the year, but didn't really have enough time to get into it completely and stuff. The idea is, if I'm going to give them information, you know, about acids, bases, whatever the topic is, which I would traditionally give on a blackboard in a classroom, or they'd read something in, you know, I'm going to make a video. The video I'm going to make is maybe a 5-10 minute video that's sort of, it's not me lecturing, but it's the information. And obviously much shorter than it would take me in the classroom. Their homework now is watch the video. So I'm giving what I would traditionally have given in the classroom on the video.
Dick, I'm going to interject just a
Yeah.
moment. There are a couple of questions I wanted to ask just to make sure I have some clarity in my own mind. You said that you made these 5 to 10 minute videos. Were you able to make these consistently on a daily basis for the students?
You know, it wasn't a daily basis thing because, no, I didn't need to. I didn't try to. Because it turned out that an entire unit was really only 3 major topics. So in a 2-week unit, including labs and all this other stuff, really I only needed to make 2 or 3 of these videos. So there wasn't this homework every night, no.
Okay, so it was very specific. You're able to make it very specific, though, to some of the essential outcomes of the course.
What we had identified, yeah, exactly.
And then there's another question you were speaking at. You mentioned that you started to pilot some of this the prior year.
Last year, yeah.
Last year. Did you get any information from the students, any feedback or any kind of survey from them on their thoughts that made you think that this would be something you'd want to pursue further as a goal?
I did. You know, I not only saw how it was going in the class, and I certainly got responses. That feedback was, some of the kids who hadn't done homework all year didn't think they needed to do the homework, enjoyed doing this. These were kids who hadn't done, you know, they didn't feel like they need to. Now they were doing it. It's 5-10 minutes. You watch the video. along with it, after I learned, I started giving them kind of a note sheet, kind of an outline of the topics that would be covered in there, so they could follow along and they would have to answer questions or do activities. So it was a little homework too, although it was disguised, that went with the video. The other response was a lot of kids thought, this is great because I can stop the video. I don't get it. I can stop the video and watch it again to answer this question that's on the homework sheet. The other big response, positive response from this was they used them before the test to review, because the video stayed on, stayed available to them, and so they could watch it again. There were some bad things about it, some things they didn't like. Those were the positives.
Okay.
I suppose you want to know the negatives too.
Well, why don't you give me a point or two, because I can see from you talking about it that there's a lot of enthusiasm. This is something that you seem to have picked up on, found some success with. I would like to hear those negatives. I'd also like to hear how you envision that this is going to tie into some of our departmental goals or school goals, and how exactly you'd want to tie that into, and how we'd measure the successfulness of a goal like this.
Okay. The one biggest problem I had with this last year, which is really what I'd like to work on this year, is okay, now I got all this time in class. What the heck do I do with it? Which ties into our departmental goals. Part of our departmental goals are not only content, which I can get through the video, is that the application of that content, the understanding, the integration, the higher level thinking. And so part of that is then incumbent on me to come up with activities we can do in class, which take the knowledge and then goes to that other level. Uses some of those skills that we're trying to teach. That I had struggled with last year. That was difficult. And so it turned into some days, here's a worksheet. Work in a group of 2 or 3. You got a question, I'm going to come over and help you guys. But work on this worksheet. And a lot of them, it was a lot easier for me to fall back on, okay, well, here's the same worksheet I give you, just do some problems. And it wasn't that higher level which I was looking for.
Sure. Let me keep going down that route with you, because you're right. Definitely one of our departmental goals is developing that critical thinking, that higher order thinking, that skill and content integration. Do you have some ideas of some particular products, materials, or templates that you would use to help enhance exactly what you discussed? It sounded to me as though you fell into, what do I do at this time? I'm familiar with giving this homework, and here we'll give this worksheet, but it sounds like from your vantage point, you desire more from that. So is there a way that I can work with you, help you, talk through, that we could come to some sort of consensus on templates that we would put together, or how we might enhance those materials to really develop the critical thinking piece, but to also integrate those skills within that period of time in the classroom that you can now control?
That's one of the things I put on here is, those are the things, that's really what I would like to work on this year.
Dick, you mentioned we're looking at this in Honors Chem. We're going through a process in the chemistry curriculum right now to do some revisions to that curriculum. Has the team finalized a scope and sequence of content and skills for the course? Or is that something that the team is still working on?
No, that's something they're still working on. And as you know, it's mirroring regular chemistry. Sure. Regular chemistry, we're letting get a step ahead of us. And then the honors chemistry, we're seeing how does that apply to our different book and our different...
Sure. Part of the reason I asked that is I really like the idea. I like the fact that it's something you've already had some experience with piloting. You have some ideas on how to make it what worked and the areas of where you're looking to improve it. One of the areas that would be important for me with a goal like this is that as we do work on these types of templates, these types of materials, that there is purpose to, within this unit or these objectives that we're covering, that there's a clear linkage to the specific skills that we are looking to develop within that particular unit concurrently. So that'd be one of the things that I would want to work with you, follow up with throughout the year, is that that documentation piece is there so that there's purpose. I think that you have already started to hit on the head of, here's the next step in terms of what this looks like. I think it's very feasible for us to move forward and for us to experiment with different tools, different formats to make this work. I think the piece that makes this measurable from my perspective is if there is that clearly defined sequence that would allow us to know when I'm making this video or I'm making this material, here are the specific topics that I'm looking to develop. And part of the reason I think that that's important is from a broader team perspective, it becomes more usable. Even if another teacher wouldn't necessarily do it the exact same way, it becomes more usable for them as part of that PLC.
That makes sense.
And again, I think that that's something that, from my perspective, not only could it help you out in your position, but it would become very helpful to the PLC. And I think that that's something also within this process is any way that we can both support the teacher as well as support the larger team, that's going to be doubly beneficial for us. Let me see if I have some other questions here. Specific to this goal that we've talked about, is there anything from the rubric that you thought, here's where this directly ties into, or here's an area where either I'm trying to move from a proficient to a distinguished through this particular goal?
You know, I haven't really thought that through completely, to tell you the truth. As I look at the rubric here, it has something to do with domain 2, the classroom environment, because I really found that that's what I found last year, is the kids were really encouraged about doing this, more than the traditional book assignment or a worksheet that I would used to send home with them. Maybe 2D here, managing student behavior, because the time in class was not sitting there staring out the window. They were more active learners, and I think that's something that my kids would benefit from. I think 2B also, establishing a culture for learning. They need the responsibility of watching these videos, being held accountable. So I think 2B and 2D would certainly, and then 3, I think, domain 3 would really be useful here. 3B, I guess I'd like your opinion, but I'm not sure. I think 3C for sure, engaging students in learning, again, kind of goes with that.
I'm going to interject because we talked about that classroom follow-up piece, and the biggest, or the next step in this process, to me, again, those purposeful questions and developing that critical thinking, developing that, how do I take this to an application or a synthesis level? How do I ask that question so that within this content I'm specifically addressing those skills? There's no doubt in my mind that that would come back to that.
And like this says here, the students need to start asking those questions too and figure that out.
Correct.
Okay, that makes sense.
And I think part of it is how I ask that question or how I lead it is going to then in turn engage or re-engage that student who maybe had checked out of the traditional classroom because they didn't feel like they needed to do
that
this
activity
work.
we do the next day would really, okay, that makes sense.
I'm just jotting that down for my notes too, because I'm going to go back and I'm going to start to take my notes and I'm going to write it up on this form here.
Okay.
Before I turn this in, I'm going to run it by you so to make sure that my language is consistent with what we've talked about here today.
Okay.
Is there anything else that as we've talked through this process here this morning that you'd either like some follow-up on, some clarity on, or maybe another question that's arisen based on anything that I've asked you?
I'm still stuck on that piece of what the activities are going to look like, you know. And so I think as I look at other people's work in our division, I may get some ideas of how they, even though it's not going to be the same format in terms of, you know, what you do in class stuff, the kind of questions people are asking, how to elicit the same kind of higher order thinking, higher level thinking and development of skills, I think would be useful.
Dick, would you be opposed to me recommending a few folks in the department maybe to reach out to? People who have done some of this work both in the science department or in the math department, because we have both here, or throughout the building, to maybe just connect you with people through who might have some other ideas for you to take a look at. And then that would give you an opportunity to see what works, what doesn't work, and what might fit with this goal and your teaching style.
Sure, that might be helpful.
I'm going to jot that down then as well.
Okay.
And then I'll follow up with you and I'll follow up with those people as well to maybe get in contact with them.
Okay.
My last question would be, as you go through this process, do you envision that whatever that format takes on, that it would be something that you would envision sharing with the PLC, something that you envision other team members using?
I certainly don't mind sharing it. I mean, my PLC is certainly welcome to look at it and see the ideas, and even if they want to just use the videos as resources, as review resources, that's all great. But I wouldn't want to force it on any of them.
Dick, what I might want to do is, I definitely want to support this. I think there's a lot of things that not just support what we're doing departmentally, but then I also believe in philosophically with what you're doing here. I would want to probably follow up at some point during the year, just to see the feasibility of maybe taking some of these and helping to integrate them into the PLC in some way. And I think that you need the time to kind of tease out what this looks like first, but it would be a follow-up conversation I'd like to have, maybe at the semester. Follow up how it's going and see how it might fit in the PLC, the larger scale.
Okay.